April 14th, 1912. Marconi operators Phillips and Bride spent most of the night making repairs to the broken wireless set. After an investigation, they discovered that the trouble lay with the transformer. Operator Bride later wrote, "Mr. Phillips and myself have had a deal of trouble, owing to the leads from the secondary of the transformer having burnt through the inside of the casing and making contact with certain iron bolts holding the woodwork and frame together, thereby earthening the power a great extent. After binding these leads with rubber tape, we once more had the apparatus in perfect working order, but we had put in nearly 6 hours' work." Though the work was complete and the wireless was up and running again, the backlog of passenger messages had continued to grow larger and larger. As more and more messages arrived from the inquiry office via pneumatic tube throughout the day, it seemed that Phillips and Bride would be dealing with this backlog all the way to New York. That morning, the weather shifted. After sunrise, Titanic sailed through a patch of rain, with brisk 20-knot winds blowing in from the northwest. At 10:30 a.m., church services were held in the first-class dining saloon, presumably conducted by Captain Smith himself. It concluded with the hymn, "Eternal Father, Strong to Save," at around 11:15 a.m. In second class, the service was led by Purser Reginald Barker in the dining saloon, with a Catholic Mass also being held in the second-class library by Reverend Thomas Biles. Afterwards, Reverend Biles went down to hold another Mass for third-class passengers. Around noon, the skies cleared, but despite the sunrise, the air remained icy cold, and the temperatures continued to drop. The ship's notice boards brought good news. That day's run had been the best so far. Titanic had covered 546 miles at an average speed of 22.06 knots. Very good results for a brand new liner whose engines had yet to be fully broken in. This excellent run was no doubt one of the main topics during lunch, which in first class included pea soup, Welsh rabbit, grilled mutton chops, lamb with mint sauce, salmon, potted shrimps, and a variety of pastries, to name a few. And soon, first class would have even more news to discuss. Irene Renee Harris had spent the afternoon at a poker game in one of the private promenades with her husband Henry, one of the most prominent producers on Broadway. The game broke up once the dinner bugle call came and the Harrises were making their way back to their suite on C-deck to dress. Renee slipped on a greasy spot on the aft grand staircase, likely from a dropped tea cake, and tumbled down 6 or 7 steps, breaking her arm in the process. Luckily for Renee, Dr. O'Loughlin, the ship's doctor, was just down the hall from their suite, and he came to see her at once. Afterwards, she personally called for Dr. Frauenthal, a fellow passenger, to set her arm in a sling. News travels fast on ships, and cards were being delivered to her room, wishing Renee a speedy recovery. However, Mrs. Harris would not let a broken arm stop her from enjoying the best dinner of the voyage. While she dressed, up on deck, passengers were enjoying the magnificent sunset. Edith Rosenbaum described it being blood red. Dinner that evening was grand, especially in the restaurant on B-deck. It was here in the restaurant where ladies and men would dress up. A great deal of the most prominent passengers on board were dining in the restaurant, many being guests of the party the Wideners were throwing in honor of Captain Smith, who was also in attendance. In the reception room, passengers gathered to listen to the band's concert, a perfect end for a perfect evening. We had listened to a beautiful concert, just as one might sit in one's own home. With never a realizing sense of being on the ocean, why should not one forget? No motion, no noise of machinery, nothing suggestive of a ship. Happy, laughing men and women, constantly passing up and down those broad, strong staircases, and the music went on and the ship went on. Miss Elizabeth Schutz, first-class passenger.